let's back up a bit and go to the place where he introduces being as an idea. Bottom of page 251. What is it which the mind is bound to conceive as belonging to all things and does not belong to any two things in the same way? This is the riddle of the Sphinx, and the solution is being. The classical objection on the following page, the classical objection to this statement is that being is such a vague predicate, if you can apply it to everything, and we call it the dash from the Incredibles principle. If everything's being, then nothing is being. Being is not actually useful for discriminating between different things. I can subtract it from both sides of the equation, so to speak, and have exactly the same values and inequalities as before. Gilson says this is true, but it's not an objection. Page 252. To describe the being as the principle of knowledge does not mean that all subsequent knowledge can be analytically deduced from it. So we're not trying to do the job of Spinoza here. But rather it means that being is the first knowledge through which all subsequent knowledge can be progressively acquired. So we're getting to articulating the beginnings of a system of metaphysics here. We shouldn't think of being as the kind of concept which once we grasp it we can deduce the rest of our knowledge from it. Here he calls it the first knowledge, and we acquire all other knowledge through it. As soon as it comes into touch with sensible experience, the human intellect elicits the immediate intuition of being. So we begin talking about intuitions now. He says at the bottom of 252, the intellect does not deduce, it intuits. And so here's the problem with the Cartesian or the rationalist or the Spinozist method. It tries to deduce things from being and concepts of being. Yes, sir. Let's take a look at these intuitions. After, at the bottom of 252, he says the intellect does not deduce, it intuits, and it sees in the light of intellectual intuition the discursive power of reason slowly builds up from experience a determinate knowledge of concrete reality. Thus, in light of the immediate evidence, that is to say, abstracting from or building on or from our sense experience, the intellect sees, and I think we get here 5 intuitions, these key intuitions. Sees that something is, top page 253 in my edition, or exists, that what exists as that which it is. What do I have? I have an intuition of being. I have a principle of identity, that things are what they are, they're not other things. That a thing cannot be and not be at one and the same time. We have principle of non-contradiction. We see that the thing either is or it is not, and no third supposition is possible. That is to say, we recognize the law of the excluded middle, that existence and non-existence are the only two options. If a thing is being, it's the being of a thing that is. The solution to the problem of being is to assign being to the becoming is to assign the category of becoming to being. And last but not least, that being only comes from being, which is the very root of the notion of causality. Principle of causality. Being only comes from being, or phrased negatively, you can't get something from nothing. How do you get something from nothing in creation ex nihilo? From God. God who is before anything else is. Reason does not have to prove any one of these principles, otherwise they would not be principles but conclusions. Okay, keep in mind the criticism of Kant for taking the soul, freedom, and God as principles rather than conclusion. Kant just stops after positing those and showing their necessity from phenomenal experience. Patiently weaving the threads of concrete knowledge, reason adds to the intellectual evidence of being and its properties the science of what is. Okay, from these things that we get metaphysics, the science of being. His suggestion then here is that we have this intellectual intuition of being, intuition of causality, intuition of these properties. You could actually think of mathematical analogs for some of these. Okay, A is equal to A is not equal to not A or not A, exclusively. The first principle brings with it, therefore, both certitude that metaphysics is the science of being as being, and the abstract laws according to which this science has to be constructed. We have here, he says, first principles. The mind should be able to recognize these and assent to them without proof. This is the fundamental bedrock on which metaphysics is built, as the science of being as being. The next paragraph, the twofold character of the intellectual intuition of being, which is that it is given in any sensible experience and yet transcends all particular experience. This is both the origin of metaphysics, because being is everywhere. We can't avoid experiencing being. And also the permanent occasion of its failures. Because it is everywhere, we're constantly in danger of mistaking it for something else, mistaking it for the part in which it is presented. So on the following page we get what I've noted in the margin as the discussion of the mistake of taking the part for the whole. I've said before, in some ways this is the characteristic error of modernity, is to take part of reality and blow it up into the whole of reality, trying to give an account of the whole, a metaphysical account that is basically just a generalization of the part. To do metaphysics correctly, to give a correct account of the whole, you have to get down to these bedrock principles and then construct from them a science of being as being. Seems to be what Gilson is saying here. Middle of 254, that which is but a particular determination of being, or a being, will be invested with all the universality of being itself. So the difficulty here is that one takes being and knowledge of a being and begins to treat it as though it were capital B, being itself, or being as being. One doesn't go deep enough with one's method and one's first principles, so one ends up using a particular science that's appropriate to some class of beings, lowercase b, and trying to apply it to the whole of reality, to being as such, to capital B, being. That's the mistake. That's the permanent source of its failures.